Red Alert is an old-school strategy game, a sequel to Command and Conquer, which honestly serves more like a standalone expansion for all that it adds. The game was released when strategy games were beginning to evolve from simple 2D pixels, and had a hand in defining the genre for a generation, but perhaps not so much as the previous title. For this reason, among others, Red Alert is still thought of fondly among a decent many, whether for its older design and challenge or how it opened a door for them into the wider world of strategy games. Indeed, the game is quite challenging, especially to beginners. It can leave a strong feeling of nostalgia, but with a fantastic soundtrack, graphics which were decent for the time, and actually hold up better than you'd think due to how clean they are, how the game resists throwing a pixelated mess of detail at you, which in turn allows it to be pushed into HD easier. And fun, over-the-top story that you can tell everyone had a blast playing around with. For all that, however, I can't say the gameplay holds up. Sure, it's functional, and I'll admit I didn't delve overly much into the multiplayer scene. Though it's easy to see where problems might crop up, but there's a host of issues the game has which would not be acceptable in a game today. For starters, we'll talk about the two factions. The Allies are your generic good guys, designed with speed and affordability in mind, while the Soviets are your big bads, whose units are designed around strength. Both factions share a number of basic units and structures, such as riflemen, engineers, construction yards, power plants, and unit builders, that are interchangeable but for color coding. But there are a wealth of differences outside those units. Unfortunately, those differences happen to be wildly unbalanced. Simply put, the quality of Soviet units and structures is better. Their worst tank is twice as powerful as the Allies' best, and is easy to spam in the beginning, creating a force that would be difficult to overcome, while the late game is dominated by staunch defensive buildings and their overpowering mix of ground and air units. The Allies' only real edge and power is their navy, which isn't that much an edge over the Soviet submarines, and the overwhelming number of maps, especially in the single player, don't contain water bodies that truly take advantage of it. Hell, in my campaign I wasn't able to build their most powerful unit until the last stage of the game, and it could not reach the Soviet main base. Aside from that, the Allies gain a couple nice utility abilities, being able to launch a satellite to see the entire map, which is a slight underwhelming since once Fog of War is unlocked you can see it forever, and rocketmen, which are infantry who have range and power to take out buildings, vehicles, and even air units quickly, though are rather expensive at half the price of a light tank, and extremely fragile. It's little to keep up with, unfortunately. A quick burst of machine gun fire from anything, really, a missile from a mammoth, or even a helpless ore harvester truck running them over can take out a group of 5, a whopping 1,500 credits, in an instant. Which brings us to the mammoth tank, the big, hulking, anti-everything, which only a few can demolish an enemy base without much difficulty. Or the Soviets could simply build an unstoppable air force, which can only be countered with mass amounts of rocketmen, which need to be bought en masse and carefully positioned. Or mass AAA guns, which need to be even more carefully positioned considering they have nearly zero range. Of course, then there's the super weapons, the nuke with little destructive range and not enough power to take out the heaviest units or structures. Or the Allies' Chronosphere, which can teleport a singular armored unit, no humans, no APC full of humans, making it entirely useless as the Allies can only accomplish any real destruction via swarms, or with their specialist commando unit, Tanya. Or there's the Soviet Iron Curtain, which can make a single unit invulnerable to all damage, for about a minute by default, depending on your game speed. My game, it ran about 15 seconds. About enough time for it to wave hello before every surrounding unit demolishes it. Complete wastes of credits. So yeah, for all the diverse units, the flamers and rocketmen, the hit-and-run V2 rockets and powerful cruisers, at the end of the day the game feels like it comes down to who can swarm the most tanks and build the better defenses against such swarms. The answer to that question, invariably, the Soviets. Frustrating as the balance, or lack thereof, might be, however, I find there are bigger fish to fry. The AI, for instance, has some of the worst pathfinding I've seen in the game. Ore trucks will run through enemy bases instead of harvesting safe areas directly beside your base for no conceivable reason. Moving swarms will suddenly decide their path is blocked by said swarm and attempt to go around, often through enemy bases. Narrow paths, such as bridges, are just painful to watch units move through. The AI will get stuck in the loops within the terrain, unable to recognize wide open paths beside them. Then, of course, there's the glitches. Units flat ignoring commands, thinking you meant to move instead of engage, or moving closer instead of engaging at the range you determine. Some of the latter isn't too difficult to overcome, but when you're dealing with missions featuring fragile commando units and fast one-hit killers like dogs, these little glitches too frequently lead directly to unavoidable deaths, an issue compounded by shoddy mouse controls, which use the left button to select, drag select, and order, and the right button to deselect. Imagine playing the game, especially at fast speeds. You're controlling Tanya, the commando, when around the corner comes flying a dog. You move to click it, but oops, you were moving your mouse slightly while clicking, and created a selection box instead, deselecting your unit. Mission failure. Next time you manage to click the dog fine, but Tanya happens to be running and wishes to complete her run before following her next order. Mission failure. Next, you are caught clicking the dog during the random frame where, instead of attack, you're given a no interaction symbol, which moves the unit closer, meaning you can literally click too quickly in the game. Failure. See the frustration? Unfortunately, many of the missions are built around such frustration, creating something of an artificial difficulty. The game is often scripted to have certain things happen, but the AI isn't smart enough to follow those scripts. Things happen which can go so far as breaking certain levels, if not making them needlessly difficult. Too often the game puts you in a scenario where the game should easily stop you, but instead does just enough to constantly cripple you, until you've got nothing left. And this can create an incredibly frustrating experience. Too many levels are built around the idea of you doing exactly the right thing at exactly the right time, and doing so all based off foreknowledge of multiple failures. None of this is helped by an omniscient, omnipresent AI that's able to rebuild structures in the exact position they were destroyed as soon as they are destroyed, or move infantry out of the way of closing vehicles, or vice versa, effortlessly, or keeps units moving, dodging shots expertly while you try to engage, or engage your units for a maximum range that trivializes your own efforts at the same, or the base building, where the AI will often have structures built in opposite corners of the map, yet your own building is highly restricted to allow no more than a couple grid spaces between structures. This razor's edge design does not mesh with the game's other faults, unfortunately, and it's only the save system, should you choose to use it, which would make this anything close to playable for most. This isn't to say the game is without fun. When things do come together as they're supposed to, it can be a blast. For this, I actually like many of the early missions in the game, which, while scripted, give enough leeway to play around some. It's a tight design which doesn't feel too tight. The unit variety is fun to mess around with. The game features a surprising number of hotkeys despite lack of decent mouse controls, and there's a speed selection on top of difficulty selection which gives great customization and difficulty. The game even comes with a good map editor, which allows you to create anything the developers made within the game for a multiplayer or a skirmish. End of the day though, this is a difficult game to recommend. If you're watching this, it means you probably already played the game once upon a time and have some opinion on it, even nostalgia for it. I know I certainly do, despite the fact that I'll likely never touch it again. Yet looking past that nostalgia, looking past what this and like games did for strategy once upon a time, and the game honestly doesn't play all that well, and has aged significantly in its gameplay. If you loved this game once upon a time, nothing will ever stop you from doing so to this day. Or if you're a strategy buff who somehow missed out on this one, or interested to see what the genre evolved from, give it a try. To anyone else, I'm afraid this title doesn't have much left to offer. If you are interested, I'd personally recommend trying out one of the HD mods available. The title has a native resolution that's a little tiny for my tastes, and far too pulled in. Personally, I'd recommend sticking with 720. Any larger and units can become too small, and resolution becomes larger than numerous maps, and you can ruin some of the balance by making things like radar structures useless. If not, feel free to check out some of the videos I posted and gain a better glimpse at what the game had to offer.